Welcome to today's historical deep dive, where we step out of the noise of the present and into the echoes of the past to understand the forces that shape our world. We dissect the lives of titans, not just their triumphs, but the human choices behind the legends. And few lives offer a more fertile ground for study than the meteoric rise and cataclysmic fall of Napoleon Bonaparte. Was he a liberator? Or a tyrant, a genius or a gambler, a man of destiny, or a product of unparalleled circumstance? If you love immersive, real storytelling about ambition and downfall, hit like and subscribe. It helps us more than you know, bringing these deep dives to life. Drop a comment with your favorite Napoleon quote, or the moment from his life that shocked you most. Let's begin and change the way you think about history. Paris, 1799. You stand amidst the clamor and decay of a city weary unto death. A decade has passed since the Bastille fell, but the promised dawn of liberty has curdled into a long, dark night. The revolution, once a furious fire for fundamental rights, now gutters and smokes, a corrupt, sputtering mess. At its head sits the Directory, a five-headed beast of weak, squabbling politicians, presiding over an empty treasury, widespread brigandage terrorizing the countryside, and a populace aching for stability, any stability. The very air feels thick with cynicism and the murmur of whispered plots. Every café is a hotbed of discontent. Every shadowed street corner holds the potential for explosive unrest. Beyond the borders, France is losing ground. The revolutionary armies, once invincible engines of change, are pushed back on multiple fronts. A palpable desperation hangs in the air like the permanent smell of damp cobblestones and unwashed humanity. You feel the fatigue of a decade of violent upheaval deep in your bones, the sheer exhaustion of constant change and failed promises. People speak of a strong hand, a man who can cut through this rot, a savior. They look, perhaps unexpectedly, to the east, where General Bonaparte has been campaigning in Egypt. His expedition there has been a mixed bag of tactical triumphs against local forces, but a strategic disaster. His fleet annihilated by the British under Nelson at the Battle of the Nile. His army ultimately trapped by logistical nightmares and disease. Yet, back home, the narrative spun by his fervent supporters and masterfully crafted by Napoleon himself is one of daring adventure, ancient wonders unveiled, and unconquered glory. He abandons his struggling army, a detail often glossed over in the glowing reports, slipping through the British blockade in a risky gamble. His return, quiet and almost furtive at first, instantly ignites a spark in the tinderbox of Parisian society. There's a collective holding of breath across the city. Could he be the one? The vacuum of power left by the Directory's utter failure, the gaping void of legitimate authority, creates an irresistible opportunity for a man with charisma and a reputation for decisive action. It reveals a fundamental, chilling truth about leadership and power. In times of profound crisis and overwhelming popular discontent, when the established order collapses from within, the stage is set for the ambitious and ruthless to seize control. The insight here is stark and unsettling. Legitimacy erodes completely when governance fails its people, leaving a void that sheer willpower, calculated charisma, and the perception of strength are perfectly poised to fill. Your reflection in this moment is chilling. How easily a people, utterly exhausted by chaos and disillusioned by the failure of complex freedoms, will trade those hard-won liberties for the simple, brutal promise of order. They pave the way, perhaps unknowingly, for figures who promise salvation but seek dominion. The stage is set, not for the continuation or perfection of the republic they fought for, but for its cunning, violent, and ultimately predictable end. He lands at Frejus in October 1799, not as a general fleeing a failed campaign, but as a specter conjured by a desperate nation. The ship docks, and instead of reprimands for abandoning your army in Egypt, you are met with delirious cheers. The rumor mill has outrun the facts. The narrative has been seized. You are the hero who brought Italy to its knees, the savior France craves. The journey north is less a travelogue and more a coronation procession. Townsfolk pour into the streets, their faces alight with hope, chanting the name of the man they believe can restore order to the chaotic Directory years. You see their desperation, feel the potent energy of their collective yearning. It is a strange, almost surreal phenomenon. A general who left his soldiers sweltering and vulnerable is greeted with the fanfare usually reserved for conquering emperors. This welcome is a masterclass in the architecture of myth. It reveals a profound and often dangerous truth about leadership and public perception. Reputation, when skillfully cultivated, or when it aligns perfectly with a nation's deepest anxieties and aspirations, can become entirely untethered from reality. The people project onto you their desires for stability, strength, and glory. They see the victorious general of yesteryear, not the man who abandoned his post. It is a powerful, unsettling demonstration of how easily a carefully constructed or fortuitously aligned image can override uncomfortable truths. Meanwhile, the Directory, a five-headed beast of bureaucratic inefficiency and corruption, watches your approach with a mixture of apprehension and cynical calculation. They are weak, unpopular, clinging to power like drowning men to driftwood. Some among them see you not as a threat, but as a potential tool, a strong military arm to prop up their crumbling regime, perhaps to put down insurrections or finally vanquish foreign foes. This is their tragic irony. In their desperation for a protector, they fail to see the predator entering their midst. They offer you a seat at their table, unaware you are already eyeing the entire feast. This moment is a turning point, not just for France, but for your understanding of power. You witness firsthand how a nation's need, coupled with charismatic presence and a conveniently potent reputation, can forge an unstoppable political force. It teaches you the value of controlling the narrative, of being the symbol people need, even if that symbol is a carefully edited version of the truth. Ask yourself, how often do we, even today, project our hopes onto figures based on image rather than substance? How susceptible are we to the power of myth, especially when we desperately want to believe in a savior? This tumultuous return is a stark lesson. Be wary of the power of myth-making. A carefully crafted image can blind a populace to underlying motives and create a foundation for unchecked power. You see the path opening before you, a path paved not just with military might, but with the powerful, unpredictable currency of public adoration. And you begin to consider where that path might lead. Behind drawn curtains in elegant Parisian salons, the true machinations begin. The air hangs thick with the scent of expensive perfume and stale ambition. You are transported to these clandestine chambers, far removed from the chaotic streets where the revolution's ideals were forged in blood and fire. Here, The battleground is polished wood and hushed whispers. The weapons are calculated words and veiled threats. Abbé Sieyès, the political architect who drafted constitutions faster than France could tear them down, paces the room. His vision for the Republic is failing under the Directory's corrupt incompetence. He needs a strong arm, a sword to cut through the political knot. He needs a military figurehead, popular enough to legitimize a coup, malleable enough to control. His gaze falls upon the returning hero from Egypt, Bonaparte. Sieyès, a man who saw politics as geometry and people as variables, sees in Napoleon the perfect equation for seizing power. Enter Talleyrand, the limping, brilliant prince, survival incarnate. A man whose loyalty was a compass always pointing towards the prevailing power. He is a master of the backroom deal, his cynicism as sharp as his wit. Talleyrand joins Sieyès not out of principle, but out of foresight. He smells the decay of the Directory and the rising star of Bonaparte. He understands that power, like a ship, must be boarded before it leaves the harbor. His presence legitimizes the conspiracy in certain circles, adding a layer of aristocratic polish to the planned overthrow. Then there is Fouché, the cold, efficient minister of police, a chameleon who had survived the terror by out-terrorizing the terrorists. He now holds the keys to the state's internal security. His agreement is crucial. He promises to look the other way, to misplace reports, to ensure the streets remain quiet when the time comes. Fouché's motive is simple: self-preservation and continued power. He sees which way the political wind is blowing and trims his sails accordingly. This unholy trinity, the planner, the enabler, the shield, form the core of the cabal. Imagine the scene: brilliant minds, stained hands, sipping wine, plotting the overthrow of the state they supposedly serve. They dissect the ailing Directory like surgeons planning an amputation. They weigh public opinion, measure military loyalty, calculate the risks. This cabal reveals a core, unsettling insight about seizing power. Major political shifts are rarely spontaneous uprisings born purely from the will of the people. They are often orchestrated by a small, determined elite who understand leverage, timing, and the art of manipulation. The public outcry, the street protests, the revolutionary fervor, these can be the smokescreen, while the true decisions are forged in the quiet, private agreements of a few. Napoleon arrives, initially hesitant, perhaps even slightly bewildered by the complexity of Parisian politics after years on campaign. But the ambition, the restless drive, quickly asserts itself. He sees the opportunity Sieyès offers, not just a role as a figurehead, but a path to genuine power. The decision to join this conspiracy is a pivotal moment. It is a leap from military commander to political player, a choice that prioritizes personal assent above the constitutional order he swore to protect. This wasn't the roar of the battlefield. It was the viper's nest of political intrigue, and Napoleon, despite his military genius, had to learn a new skill: treacherous language. Your reflection here is unsettling. The fate of nations, the course of history, can be decided not in public forums or grand pronouncements, but in the clandestine agreements of a few powerful individuals operating in the shadows, highlighting the perpetual, often invisible tension between the public facade of governance and the private ambition that truly drives events. How often, you must wonder, has history been shaped by such whispers in silk, such carefully poured glasses of wine, while the world outside remained oblivious? Fabricating crisis, the legal cover. The air in Paris thickens with conspiracy, but the plotters need more than backroom whispers. They need a veneer of legality, a thin, official skin stretched over their naked ambition. Their target, the Council of Ancients, the elder, ostensibly more conservative chamber of the Directory's legislature. It's a strategic move, a political chess opening. You watch as Joseph Fouché, the ever-shifting fox of French politics, manufactures intelligence with chilling precision. Not a real threat, mind you, but the idea of one. A non-existent Jacobin plot brewing in the volatile streets of Paris, ready to erupt and swallow the city in revolutionary chaos. They whisper this fiction into the ears of key ancients, playing on their fears of renewed radicalism. And it works. The council, genuinely alarmed or perhaps politically compliant, reaches for a rarely used article of the Constitution. This is the cynical brilliance unfolding before you, using the very framework designed to protect the state as a tool for its subversion. This article allows the legislative bodies to be moved out of Paris for their safety and, crucially, vests command of the troops responsible for this move in the general assigned to carry it out. The chosen location, St. Cloud, a short distance outside the city, easily controlled, easily isolated. The chosen general, Napoleon Bonaparte. The threads converge perfectly. You see the mechanism now, the clockwork precision of usurpation disguised as preservation. Invent a crisis. Invoke a law meant for emergencies. Gain control of the military and physically remove the legislature from the public eye, making them vulnerable, pliable. It demonstrates a profound, perhaps tragic insight into the nature of power. Those seeking absolute control rarely discard laws entirely. Why build a new house when you can simply gut the existing one, twisting its beams and stones to your new design? They manipulate the legal frameworks, using them not as guides for governance, but as tools for subversion. Your reflection is sobering, chilling. The letter of the law, the carefully crafted articles and clauses, offers little protection when the spirit of justice is absent, when those wielding power prioritize expediency, their own self-interest, over principle. It's a masterclass in political theater, a chilling rehearsal for the ease with which institutions can be hollowed out from within. Ask yourself, when the rules are bent this subtly, this deliberately, how do you recognize the moment legality ends and tyranny begins? What would you have done, watching the foundation stones of the Republic being thus undermined, draped in the flag of necessity? The crisp air of 18 Brumaire bites at your cheeks as you join the stream. Carriages, drab and official, rumble over cobblestones, not towards the heart of Paris, but away from it, west, towards the quiet suburb of St. Cloud. You are part of a bizarre procession, the physical manifestation of a conspiracy unfolding in broad daylight. Legislators, bundled against the morning chill, fill these vehicles, some genuinely fearful, others exchanging furtive, knowing glances, complicit in the plot to overthrow the very government they serve. Surrounding them, everywhere you look, are soldiers, not the weary, often unpaid troops of the Directory, but Bonaparte's men, resolute and disciplined, their bayonets gleaming with an unspoken threat. They are loyal to the general, a living banner, not to the abstract principles of a failing republic. You see Napoleon himself, not confined to a carriage, but riding amongst his troops, observing, assessing, his face a mask of controlled intensity. There is a tension in his posture, a flicker in his eyes, a complex blend of anxiety and fierce anticipation. This journey is the precipice. Success or ruin rides with every carriage wheel. This mundane act of relocation, this simple change of venue, is the core mechanic of the coup. It's not the dramatic storming of a building that defines this morning, but the methodical, controlled removal of the key players from the chaotic urban stage to a predefined, controlled environment. The insight here is profound and chilling. Power is often consolidated, not just by controlling ideas or armies, but by controlling physical space and movement. By isolating the legislative bodies at St. Cloud away from potential Parisian mobs or rival political factions, Napoleon and his co-conspirators minimize unpredictable variables. They are literally changing the chessboard's location to ensure the pieces can only move as intended. Ask yourself, what does it mean when power moves the assembly, rather than the assembly moving power? It reveals a fundamental truth about control. Isolating decision-makers is frequently the crucial first step in bending their decisions to your will. It's a strategic relocation of pressure points, a silent rearranging of the very ground upon which authority stands. You watch the convoy disappear down the road, carrying the fate of France within its metal and wood, realizing that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply changing the address. Mist hangs heavy over the palace grounds at St. Cloud. You arrive, the carriage wheels crunching on the gravel path, a sound too loud in the tense morning quiet. The magnificent building, once a royal residence, stands before you, now a stage for a different kind of drama, the temporary seat of the Republic's volatile legislature. Soldiers are everywhere. They patrol the manicured gardens, stand rigid by the entrances, their presence a silent, unblinking assertion of control. It's a carefully constructed tableau, forced calm draped over frantic, unseen activity. Inside, legislators mill about, a sea of confusion and suspicion eddying through the grand halls. Whispers follow hushed conversations. Glances are darted, then quickly averted. They are players who know the scene is shifting, but few understand the new script. The Council of Ancients occupies one wing, cloistered away, perhaps clinging to a semblance of dignity or just waiting for the next instruction. In another wing, the Council of 500 gathers, their usual revolutionary fervor muted by uncertainty. The Directory? A ghost. Its members have been neutralized, isolated, or, more chillingly, are active participants in the unfolding plot. Their impotence is the foundation upon which this new power is being built. The air doesn't just hum, it crackles. It's thick with unspoken expectations, heavy with the weight of hidden agendas. Every hurried step, every tight-lipped nod, speaks of a moment poised on a knife's edge. This isn't organic chaos born of panic. It's a meticulously arranged disruption. St. Cloud this morning is a vivid, breathing scene of a coup d'etat in progress, a carefully orchestrated ballet of power seizure. Here lies a crucial, often overlooked insight. The dramatic flashpoint of a revolution, the moment of decisive action, is not born of spontaneous combustion. It requires logistics. It demands planning. The apparent chaos you witness is built upon a solid foundation of preparation, communication, and the ruthless management of key players and crucial spaces. It's a stage set with precision. Every prop in place, every actor assigned their role, even if they don't fully grasp it. Your reflection here is intensely pragmatic. Effective action, regardless of its legality or morality, is fundamentally about managing the environment. It's about anticipating friction points, neutralizing opposition before the climax, and ensuring the physical space facilitates the desired outcome. What appears as sudden upheaval is, in truth, the visible consequence of extensive groundwork. Consider this morning at St. Cloud, a stage set not for debate, but for destiny. You step from the crisp autumn air into the echoing, high-ceilinged hall of the Council of Ancients. The atmosphere crackles, less with the electric anticipation of a battlefield charge, and more with the tense, brittle energy of suspicion. You are not alone. Grenadiers, their faces impassive behind their tall bearskin hats, stand sentinel at the door and flank your path. This is it, the moment to legitimize the sudden, jarring upheaval you've orchestrated. You, General Bonaparte, conqueror of Italy, architect of campaigns, standing before men whose primary weapons are words, laws, and intricate political maneuvering. You step to the podium, the eyes of dozens of seasoned politicians upon you. These are not troops ready to cheer your every pronouncement, fueled by loyalty and the promise of glory. These are men who debate abstract principles, who dissect motives, who have weathered countless political storms within these very walls. And for the first time, perhaps, you feel the cold grip of something unfamiliar. Stage fright, political vulnerability. The words you practiced, the concise, commanding phrases that rallied armies, feel trapped in your throat. You begin to speak, but it's not the voice of the general who inspired men to impossible feats. It's hesitant, rambling. You speak of a threat, vague and undefined. You mention conspiracies, dark plots swirling just outside these walls, requiring swift, decisive action. Your action, granting you extraordinary powers. Then comes the strange, almost desperate metaphor. You speak of volcanoes, of imminent eruptions of chaos. The seasoned legislators exchange bewildered glances. Volcanoes? In Paris? The disconnect is palpable. The military leader, accustomed to stark realities and clear objectives, struggles to articulate the nuanced, murky threats of political intrigue. The speech falters. You stammer, search for words, lose your train of thought. The authority that radiates from you on horseback, sword in hand, evaporates in this unfamiliar environment. Some legislators lean forward, confusion morphing into skepticism. Others, bolder, begin to heckle. Murmurs rise, then pointed questions. What threat, General? Where is the danger? Your grenadiers, symbols of your military power, look imposing, but offer no help in this verbal combat. They are trained to obey, not to persuade. And here, persuasion is the only weapon that matters. This is a vital, humbling moment, a crack appearing in the seemingly invincible facade. You witness the great general, the strategic genius, revealed as a neophyte in the purely political arena. He is brilliant at commanding men, at calculating battlefield odds, at seizing tactical advantages. But convincing skeptical civilians, navigating a labyrinth of conflicting interests, articulating a vision that resonates beyond the simple imperative of obedience, that requires a different set of skills entirely. Patience, eloquence, a deep understanding of human psychology outside the context of command, the ability to negotiate and compromise. This awkward, fumbling performance offers a profound insight, a truth often overlooked in the dazzling glow of military glory. Competence in one domain, even supreme competence like yours on the battlefield, does not automatically translate to success in another. The skills needed to lead men into battle are fundamentally different from those required to win hearts and minds in a political assembly. One demands decisive action and clear hierarchy. The other requires subtle influence, coalition building, and rhetorical skill. Consider this moment. The man who could move armies across continents stumbles over his own words before a few dozen older men in robes. It's tragically ironic, a subtle piece of cosmic wit at the expense of pure ambition. It underscores a universal truth. Everyone, no matter how driven, has their weaknesses. Even the supremely ambitious, the man who believes destiny is his to command, must learn new skills or risk exposure when stepping onto unfamiliar ground. This stumble before the ancients isn't just a historical anecdote. It's a lesson written large about the limits of focused brilliance and the necessity of adaptability. It begs the question, what skills do you rely on most? And where might your own untested weaknesses lie, waiting to be exposed when you step onto a new kind of battlefield? You leave the relatively subdued elders, shaken but the engine of your ambition still roaring. Your gaze now fixes on the Council of 500, the younger chamber, a crucible of more radical republican fire. This is where the pure, unadulterated spirit of the revolution still burns bright. Or so you hope to extinguish it quickly. You enter their hall, a space less grand, filled with a different kind of energy. Volatile, suspicious. Soldiers follow, a subtle, or perhaps not so subtle, statement of intent. As you begin to speak, a mere few sentences about stability, about order, the chamber doesn't just murmur, it explodes. It's a sound like a storm breaking indoors, shouts echoing off the walls. "Down with the dictator!" they roar, their voices laced with genuine terror and fury. "Outlaw him! No more Cromwell!" They see not a savior, but a usurper in military boots. You thought this would be a coronation. It's turning into a riot. Deputies surge forward, a physical wave of principle and rage. Hands reach for you, pulling at your coat, jostling your body. For a man who commands armies, you are suddenly vulnerable, surrounded not by enemies on a battlefield, but by elected officials determined to defend their fragile republic with their bare hands. It's a moment of raw, unscripted chaos, a stark reminder that seizing power isn't always a clean, strategic maneuver. Attempting to bypass political support, to simply impose your will through presence and force within a deliberative body, can provoke immediate, visceral resistance. You expected awe, perhaps fear. You met righteous indignation and physical defiance. This chamber, unlike the elders, is filled with men for whom republic isn't just a word, but a creed worth fighting for, even against the most formidable military hero of the age. It's a crucial, humbling insight. Principle, when deeply held, can empower ordinary men to stand against overwhelming force. It requires more than just bringing soldiers into a room. It demands political finesse you momentarily forgot you needed. Ask yourself, did you underestimate the power of an idea, or just the courage of those who believed in it most fiercely? The chamber erupts. You are no longer addressing a council. You are facing a storm of fury. Voices scream insults, accusations of dictatorship, of treachery. Hands reach out, pulling at your clothes, jostling you. This isn't the orderly transfer of power you envisioned. It is a physical confrontation, raw and visceral. You feel the sharp, sudden sting on your face, a pin, a fingernail, a small, ignoble wound delivered in the chaos. For a fleeting, terrifying instant, the carefully constructed image of the unshakable leader shatters. You are overwhelmed, caught in a current of unexpected, hostile energy. Then, your grenadiers surge forward, a wall of loyalty in blue and white. They surround you instantly, pushing back the enraged deputies, their movements precise, protective. They don't ask questions, they extract you. You are hustled, almost dragged out of the chamber, away from the din, into the relative quiet of the courtyard outside. The transition is abrupt, disorienting. Standing there, under the open sky, the mask is off. Your face is scratched, perhaps bleeding lightly. You are visibly shaken, the adrenaline draining, replaced by a profound jolt. Witnesses later describe you as pale, disoriented, perhaps even trembling. Some accounts, debated fiercely then and now, suggest you might have suffered a brief seizure, collapsing momentarily, a physical manifestation of the shock, the sheer violation of that moment. Even if not a seizure, the effect is clear. The invincible general, the master manipulator, is momentarily exposed as utterly human, vulnerable, perhaps even terrified by the near failure. This is not just a setback, it is a stark, cold splash of reality. The carefully laid plans, the military might waiting outside, the political maneuvering, all nearly undone by a few angry men with nothing but their voices and their desperation. It reveals a fundamental truth of the path to power. It is rarely linear, and it certainly isn't immune to messy, unpredictable human resistance. You planned for opposition, perhaps even defiance, but not for this raw, personal violation, this moment where control slipped entirely from your grasp. Here is the crucible, the moment the plan goes disastrously wrong. The test is not in the execution when everything is smooth, but in the immediate aftermath of chaos. How quickly can you recover? Can you absorb the shock, the humiliation, the physical and psychological blow, and reassert control? This scratched face, this shaken resolve, is perhaps the most important lesson of the day. Resilience isn't just bouncing back, it's maintaining forward momentum when everything screams retreat. Ask yourself, when your perfect plan implodes in a chaotic mess, when you are physically assaulted and left reeling, what would you do? Do you falter, or do you find the core of your ambition and push harder? This near disaster was not the end. It was a savage reminder that power must often be seized from the jaws of potential failure, and the bite marks might just leave a scar. It was a test of determination, a brutal confirmation that the path to absolute control is paved not just with victories, but with moments where you stand, bruised and disoriented, and choose not to fall. Inside the orangery at St. Cloud, the situation curdles. The Council of 500, raw with indignation, are no longer debating your coup. They are moving to declare you an outlaw, a sentence of political, perhaps even physical, death. The air vibrates with their furious shouts, the ultimate rejection of your audacious gamble. But in this viper's nest of lawmakers, one man holds a strategic position. Your younger brother, Napoleon Bonaparte, the elected president of the 500. It is his moment, his desperate, brilliant improvisation that snatches victory from the jaws of ruin. You stand outside, impatient, surrounded by your loyal troops, the very instruments of your ambition. You can feel the momentum slipping, the legal framework you sought to navigate collapsing. Then Lucian appears, bursting from the hall like an actor from a collapsing stage set. He doesn't waste time with nuanced explanations or inconvenient truths. He launches into a performance designed not for reason, but for raw emotion and military loyalty. He tears off his president's toga, a dramatic flourish, and points back at the chamber, his voice ringing with outrage. He declares, not truthfully, but absolutely, that assassins are attacking the general inside the hall, that the 500 are filled with traitors holding daggers. He doesn't ask the troops to enforce the law. He incites them to rescue their beloved leader from fabricated peril. He calls the elected representatives inside representatives of the dagger, painting them not as politicians, but as a murderous mob. This is propaganda in its purest, most potent form. This is controlling the narrative when reality proves inconvenient. Lucian understands his audience, soldiers whose allegiance is personal, military, not bound by legislative process. A story of their general in danger, attacked by shadowy assassins, resonates far more deeply than legal arguments about constitutional procedure. It bypasses the brain and strikes directly at loyalty and instinct. You watch as the soldiers, swayed by this potent brew of lies and performance, respond. They march into the orangery, not as peacekeepers, but as saviors, clearing the hall of the stunned, sputtering deputies. It is a stark, brutal lesson witnessed in real time. When facts are your enemy, create a more compelling, emotionally charged story. When your power rests on force, appeal to the emotions that command that force. Ask yourself, when chasing power, does the truth become just another tactical option, easily discarded for a more effective narrative weapon? Is the ability to spin a convincing lie the most powerful tool in a leader's arsenal? What does it mean that a dramatic fiction could overturn the will of a nation's elected body? This pivotal moment solidifies a cynical truth. In the pursuit of absolute power, truth is often the first and least mourned casualty. The narrative of the dagger proves sharper than any actual blade, and far more decisive than any law. Drums begin to beat, a thunderous pulse echoing through the halls of St. Cloud. You stand near the entrance, the tension thick enough to taste. This is it. The moment for hesitation is past. Galvanized by Lucian's desperate theatrical appeal to the troops outside, a plea for rescue from dagger-wielding deputies that frankly stretches the truth past breaking point, and by your own suddenly decisive presence, the soldiers move. Led by the flamboyant and utterly ruthless Joachim Murat, your cavalry commander, they surge forward, not as negotiators, not as guards, but as an invading force. They march into the orangery, where the Council of 500 is still trying to make sense of the day's unfolding disaster. Bayonets gleam under the diffused light, fixed onto muskets, held steady by men whose loyalty now rests solely with you. The order rings out, sharp and final. Disperse. The deputies, moments before confident in their legislative power, are confronted by the undeniable reality of armed force. Chaos erupts. It's not a debate. It's a rout. Men who legislated the fate of nations just yesterday now scream, protest, throw their robes into the fray. But their words, their laws, their revolutionary rhetoric are useless against cold steel and disciplined ranks. You watch, perhaps from the doorway, as the chamber descends into pandemonium. Some deputies, panicked, leap from the windows, tearing their robes on the glass, falling unceremoniously into the gardens below. Others claw their way towards the exits, a desperate, undignified scramble for safety. The hall, the symbolic heart of the French Republic's legislative power, is violently, brutally cleared. It is not ended by a vote, not by a constitutional amendment, but by a military eviction. This raw, unapologetic application of power is the final, chilling act of the coup. It offers a profound, brutal insight. Ultimately, when political maneuvering falters, when legitimacy is questioned, the raw application of organized force is the final, irrefutable arbiter in the seizure of power. The Republic, born from the soaring ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, dies here, not with a carefully worded decree, but under the heavy, measured tread of soldiers. Boots on a wooden floor. Ask yourself, watching this scene unfold, how easily do beautiful ideals shatter against the blunt reality of violence? The rhetoric of representation, the sanctity of legislative bodies. They offer fragile protection against those with the will and the means to simply brush them aside. This was the moment the Republic ceased to exist, replaced not yet by an emperor, but by the undeniable power of a man who understood that sometimes the bayonet is more persuasive than the ballot. Later that night, the chill settling deep into the bones of Paris, a select, desperate handful of deputies is rounded up. Not the full councils, mind you, but the compliant few, those who sided with the plotters, or were simply available and pliable. They are gathered in the St. Cloud Orangery once more, now a stage stripped bare except for the raw power on display. Soldiers line the walls, muskets glinting in the dim light. You can feel the fear palpable in the room, a suffocating presence, thicker than the night air. Before these terrified men stand the architects of the day's chaos, Sieyès, Ducos, and Bonaparte himself, a silent, imposing figure at the center of the storm he conjured. The instruction is stark, unmistakable. Pass decrees now. Abolish the Directory, the failed, corrupt regime they just overthrew by force. And critically, create a provisional government. Its form? 3 consuls, Sieyès, Ducos, and of course Bonaparte. The proceedings that follow are less a legislative session and more a grim pantomime. Each vote is a foregone conclusion, each declaration a word dictated by the power now standing over them. This isn't the will of the people, it's the will of the bayonet. You watch as legality is manufactured on demand, a thin, transparent shroud thrown over a violent power grab, still echoing with the shouts and shoves of the afternoon. It is a rubber-stamp session, pure and simple, affixing a veneer of officialdom onto raw, naked force. This cynical assembly reveals a crucial, perhaps disturbing, truth about the pursuit of power. Those who seize control through military might, through the swift application of force, rarely stop there. They instinctively understand that force alone is unstable, a temporary solution. To consolidate, to maintain long-term control, they must seek legitimacy, even if that legitimacy is a carefully constructed lie. They use compliant bodies, terrified assemblies, or manipulated legal systems to create the appearance of legality, retrospectively sanitizing their actions. You witness the birth of a legal fiction, decreed into existence by men acting under duress, designed solely to provide a flimsy foundation for the new regime. Your reflection here isn't idealistic. It's chillingly pragmatic. This midnight session underscores that the perception of legality, even if utterly hollow, is often considered not just useful, but necessary for sustained power. It's the difference between being a warlord holding territory by force and a statesman ruling by decree, however false its origin. The coup succeeded because of soldiers, but the consulate would rule because of this law. Ask yourself, does the source of law matter, or only its ability to command obedience? What does it mean when the very foundation of your government is built on a forced vote in the dead of night? This moment is a stark lesson in the realpolitik of power, how easily law can become the servant of force, not its master. The dust of the coup barely settles in Paris before the provisional government takes shape. 3 consuls stand awkwardly side by side. You look upon them. Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès, the architect of the revolution, the deep thinker, the man who sees himself as the necessary brain of France. Roger Ducos, a nonentity, brought in for window dressing, and Napoleon Bonaparte, the thunderbolt, the nation's hero, fresh from the Brumaire coup, the undeniable arm Sieyès believes he can direct. Sieyès, ever the theorist, moves first. He envisions a constitution where military power is held in check, where the executive is diffuse, and where he, the political mastermind, will pull the strings from a position he calls the Grand Elector. It is an elegant theoretical construct designed to prevent the rise of another dictator, a tragic irony given the man he has just elevated. He drafts this document with haste, convinced Bonaparte is a tool, a mere instrument of force, to be guided by his superior intellect. He fails to grasp that he has invited the wolf into the sheepfold, then handed him the keys. Bonaparte watches, but he does not wait. While Sieyès is lost in constitutional diagrams, Napoleon is in the salons, in the barracks, in the streets, solidifying his popularity, leveraging the debt France owes him for the coup, reminding everyone who brought stability. He does not openly challenge Sieyès' draft at first. That would be crude. Instead, he works subtly, relentlessly, applying pressure where it matters. He dominates the conversations, his voice sharp, his arguments decisive, wearing down the older politicians with sheer energy and unwavering resolve. He demands changes, not through polite suggestion, but with the implicit threat of his popular and military backing. He argues for a strong executive, a single guiding hand, portraying any division of power as weakness that would invite chaos. He insists the first consul must have the power to appoint ministers, propose laws, control finance, powers far exceeding anything Sieyès intended. You see the transformation happening in real time. The general shedding his military skin and revealing the political animal beneath, learning the subtle dance of influence and intimidation in the corridors of power. Sieyès, brilliant yet lacking Bonaparte's ruthless pragmatism and sheer force of will, is outmaneuvered at every turn. His carefully crafted checks and balances are stripped away. The Constitution is rewritten, molded by Napoleon's demands, granting the first consul virtually unlimited power. Re-office becomes not just the head of government, but its very engine. Ducos fades into irrelevance. Sieyès is left isolated, his grand vision shattered. This lightning-fast consolidation offers a stark lesson. Shared power arrangements cobbled together in the aftermath of upheaval are inherently unstable. They are rarely ends in themselves, but temporary platforms from which the most ambitious, the most popular, or the most ruthless participant launches their final grab for sole control. They are traps for the unwary. Ask yourself, When you enter into a partnership for power, when you ally yourself with others to achieve a common goal, are you truly an equal? Or are you, perhaps, merely a stepping stone?